Okay, so if I've done this correctly, people should be able to hear me. Are you all able to hear me out there?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Wow. Well, wonders never cease. Okay. Audience, can you hear the other participants? Smug, can you say something? Say hi to the nice people.
Hello, nice people.
Oh yeah, they can hear it. I can hear it through my stream, so we're good.
That's outstanding. Well, welcome everybody to the first ever iteration of the Confused Old Friends Game Club vodcast. My name is Ipkin Maya, but you can just call me Maya, and I am joined in our little on-air waiting or on-air lounge by Edgeworth. Edgeworth, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm a little amazed this is actually working. We also have Smugzug joining us in the chat room. Hello, sir.
Hello.
And lastly, we have Name Tag. Name Tag, how are you doing?
Doing all right.
So, what we are is a bunch of old people with no better time on our hands than to torture each other with old retro games that we've never played before. And play them together and talk to each other about it. And that's part of the reason that we're having this live stream discussion tonight. So very happy to have everybody here with us and everybody in the chat room joining us as well. I think how we will start this evening is to talk a little bit about the game that Edgeworth chose for us this evening, Environmental Station Alpha. And Environmental Station Alpha is, let me pull up my handy dandy notes here, a 2015 Metroidvania that was made out of Finland by indie developer Arvi Takari. If I recall correctly, Edgeworth, this is the first game that this individual made, or not the first game?
I think this was the first released game. He had made some, indie projects that were, not for sale, just here's a neat thing that I wanted to experiment with. You can download it for free and play around with it.
Okay, got it.
This was the first full-fledged.
Got it. And so this is a Metroidvania made in 2015. Basic premise of the game is that this is you are playing a player character, which is a robot, who must examine a vast biodome space station, which has been abandoned. And as you can see on the screen here, we're actually watching some of Name Tag's Let's Play. And so if you're not happy with the gameplay that you're seeing, please send all of your hate mail to Name Tag, because it's his fault. But we're watching the beginning of the game start now. So this is a side-scrolling game, maze-like, just like you would find in a Metroid or another type of game, and we'll see the map show up here in a little bit. It's consisting of several different areas. Just like in many Metroidvanias, many of these areas are inaccessible, and so you have to find separate items or different items that will grant your little player character new abilities like a grappling hook, the ability to double jump, and so on and so forth, so that you can dig deeper into the dungeon and try to determine what's going on in this station. But before we even get through that, as we watch one of the first sort of mini bosses appear in this game, Edge, our little game club just started this month, and it was up to you to pick what game we were going to play. And so why did you pick this? Why did you pick Environmental Station Alpha out of all of those different retro games and all of those games that we have out there? Why was this the one that you were interested in?
Because I think this is one of the best games that I have ever played, and one of the best games that you can pick up for I think it was about $8 or something.
Yeah, it was pretty. I actually think it was cheaper than that. It might have been $6.99. But you can get it. But you can get it on Steam. That's the software that it's available on. I think there's possibly a Switch port coming out in the near future, but that is the software that you can use it on right now. But yeah, about $8. But what made you talk about this, or what made this one sing to you, Edge?
So right at the beginning, the playing through up to where we're about to discuss the temple section, it feels like a Metroidvania in the most classic sense, and it just feels wonderful to play. It's nice. It's a nice environment to explore. The music is great. It certainly fits, sort of the atmosphere of, sort of melancholy exploration. There's nobody else on the station but you, so you have to figure out where you're headed. And ultimately, the second act of the game, which I hope we get to discuss in the next session, is probably one of the craziest and most fun things I've ever done in a game. I've never had so much fun backtracking through the same room I've seen 50 times just to see if I missed one little thing.
Do you remember, Edge, where you initially heard of the game? Did you hear about it from someone else, or did you watch somebody else play it? Because looking online, there is not a whole lot of information that was published about this game around the time that it came out. There's really only a couple of different reviews on it. Metacritic does not have a score for it. OpenCritic doesn't have a score for it either. There's really only a couple of reviews out there. Do you remember how you heard about it?
So it was a conscious effort for me to go and play through this designer's sort of game backlog after finishing Baba Is You, which I thought was probably one of the best puzzle games that I've ever played. So he made a Metroidvania, and I figured, well, given his pedigree from this latest game, it's probably pretty good, so I should give it a shot. And I was not disappointed.
Smugger Name Tag, do you remember ever hearing about this game when it initially came out?
Not when it came out, but I did get it through a Humble Bundle, which is how I managed to have my copy of it already ready to go when he decided which game to use.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same book.
You know, it's funny that Edge talked about enjoying the crazy second half of the game, because the couple of reviews that are out there had slightly different opinions about that second half of the game. Like I said, there's only a couple of reviews out there, but a couple that pop out is one from Destructoid. The author Jed Whitaker of that review said that, and I'm quoting now, Environmental Station Alpha didn't reinvent the wheel when it comes to Metroidvania games, but it certainly helped satisfy my appetite. The amount of secrets and post-game crypticness might be great for some, and it does extend the playtime quite a bit, but as a completionist, I found it to be more legwork than I'd like. Call me crazy, but I don't like tons of cryptography in my games, end quote. And then John Walker at Rock Paper Shotgun said, Environmental Station Alpha is a Metroid-like pixel platform that I've thoroughly enjoyed right up until the point that I didn't anymore. And yet I find myself recommending it. And we can see some of that style and some of that charm that this game sort of exudes from the video that Name Tag produced for us. And I think that's probably a good place to start, is to talk about the graphical fidelity and the graphical art direction of this. I would call it it's definitely a pixel style, but it's even a little more deconstructed than you might find in an NES version. This is a downgrade, so to speak, from a Metroid. In my opinion, what is your, having played through this game through the first half at least, what are your thoughts as far as how the visual information is displayed, especially in an exploration game like of Metroidvania, where you really do need all of these cues in order to understand what's going on?
Well, I personally would not call this game minimalist, simply because there is a good amount of detail. It's just lower resolution. But they do a lot with that resolution. As you can see, there's a lot of various elements, background, foreground. Its screen can actually get really busy at times, too busy in some areas, as I'm sure we'll get to later. But I think it looks pretty good for what it is. Like, I really do enjoy these graphics, even if they are very low resolution. I'm kind of wondering why he went so low resolution, honestly.
It kind of threw me after all the things that we've played, recently, that are more graphically inclined and just looking for those secrets that aren't there, but then you suddenly start realizing they are with that lower resolution. Is just it takes you back a bit.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting design decision. I do agree with name tag that especially in some of the boss fights, there can just be a lot of elements on the screen and sometimes be difficult to see what's going on. But for the most part, this art style does work very well, and it certainly has its charms in a lot of places.
It really does have a lot of charm in it. Like you can see on the screen right now, the little player character, his hit points is down to 4, and you can see little teeny tiny pixelated sparks coming off of his body to give that visual cue to the player that you're low on hit points and that you need to be careful here. There are a lot of little touches like that. One thing that leaps out to mind for me is when you are jumping in and out of water, all you will get is just like a one little single pixel block of dripping water off of the robot to indicate that you've been in water recently. Like the dark water that's falling off of the character now. That happens with blue water, and it also happens with green water, which is of course poisonous water in this game and will hurt you. But there are those itty bitty little touches, even with this deconstructed pixelated style here, that sort of shine through for this game. I will tell you though, there are some things that I don't love about this presentation when you get more towards the gameplay side of things. Has anybody else had issues in this game being able to determine what it is that you can and can't do from the visual cues? Like, for example, whether or not a block is destructible. I seem to continuously second guess myself or double check myself because I am not entirely sure whether or not the game is allowing me to go to a place from what the visual cues are giving me.
Yeah, definitely I've had that problem, as well as knowing, hey, if I step on this block, is it going to disappear underneath me? Because there's been a couple of times where I wasn't done with an area, but you hit that block, you fall out, and you suddenly have to go all the way back through to get back to where
You're done now.
Yeah, it's kind of a throwback to the old Metroid, like even the original Metroid, where there would be, like there's one right there, was a perfect example. There would be things that look like one thing, but would actually be a trap of some sort, or a hidden block, or a secret you're supposed to find. And I'm not the biggest fan of that. I would have preferred if there was something like Super Metroid had, where you had the X-ray vision so you could see what all the various blocks are. But I think it's just part of the genre at this point.
Some of the other things that have leapt out to me that I didn't quite understand what the game was trying to tell me at the beginning is if you're firing at an enemy and you're not actually making any damage, it looks like those little zeros come flying off of the boss's body. Like there's a few examples of it here. That did not ring to me that meant I was not doing any damage yet, or that in some way the game was trying to tell me that my damage was being blocked.
Now, I could see that they were zeros at least. That at least told me the information, but I can see it being confusing, yeah. Because it kind of looks like, oh, hey, this is a damage or some kind of impact that it's showing.
Yeah, and initially I thought, okay, maybe it's just a shield or an armor that I haven't gotten through, and hit it a couple more times and I'll get through to doing actual numbers of damage. But I found out quickly that was not the case.
And I see we have some individuals joining us in chat. And so hi to Xanth and hi to Smugzug. Other individuals in chat, whether you're playing with us or not, if you have your own commentary or if you have questions for us so that you can listen to our inarticulate answers, you are more than welcome to ask those while you're in chat. Well, let's pivot a little bit and talk about some of the sound direction and especially the gorgeous soundtrack that comes with this game. This was an instant purchase from me, and you're listening in the background to some of that soundtrack music right now, and that comes from the album is called Music for an Imaginary Sound Chip, which was done by Rupa Makinen. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I will put a link to the Bandcamp album for individuals that might be interested in hearing more about it and hearing it in higher fidelity than you're going to hear it on this stream. Edgeworth, you had said at the beginning that this was one of the things that really made you fall in love with this game. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I mean, a lot of games, and especially Metroidvania space type of games, I would imagine that this area could have some sort of creepy ambient music in the background, maybe the hum of machinery alongside the noise of the monsters. And that's not what took place here. It was just a very interesting soundtrack that sort of went more for mood than for ambiance, and I think it succeeded in a lot of cases.
It somewhat reminds me of the soundtrack from FTL, to be honest.
I very much enjoyed that this soundtrack had more going on in it, especially from like a jazzy genre. Some of the as you bounce up and down the block. Some of these sounds are really sophisticated that are coming out of this soundtrack, and I think it's also paired beautifully by the sound direction itself. The little pinging sounds that you get if you're not doing damage on an enemy, the sound of the charge beam charging up, all of that sort of stuff really sort of sparkles in this game. That the developer of the game and the soundtrack creator really understood each other and understood what the information was supposed to convey and the atmosphere was supposed to convey. Do any of you have any favorite soundtracks that are paired to any of the various areas that are out there?
None of them really stick out in my mind, unfortunately. Just that it seemed to fit the mood throughout most of it, at least.
So I think my two favorite tracks, probably my favorite upbeat one was the Temple, and my favorite relaxing one was the garden area.
I think for me, I liked the outdoor area, like you were saying, Edge. I liked the garden area. I liked the way that sound. I was also a fan of the underwater area. I thought that the music there was really good. And in the show notes, I can link to those specific tracks so that we can listen to those a little bit more closely. Any comments on this section before we move on? Smug, what have you thought of this?
I mean, it like Name Tag was saying, it stayed very thematically appropriate. Nothing seemed out of place, and it's not like there's been a point where just the music jarred me out of the game. It's more enhanced that environment or that feel.
So that takes us through sound and through graphics, and let's talk, and we will talk, of course, about this a little bit as we get into the plot of the game. Let's talk about the gameplay of the game and how it feels, how it acts, whether it makes you happy, whether or not it makes you frustrated. And I think the first place to start is the continuous issue that everybody seemed to have with just getting a controller to hook up properly with this game. Was it just me? I know that we saw some other people in our club have issues with this. Anybody else on stream just have a bear of a time getting a controller to properly respond here?
Not I. The first one I tried worked perfectly. I'm just using an old Hyperkin and plugged it in, and everything worked from push and start.
Yeah, I was one of the lucky ones. My Xbox One controller works no problem.
Yeah, I was trying to use a PS4 controller, and that was kind of a disaster until I ran it through DS4 Windows. And once Windows thought it was an Xbox controller, everything worked fine. But yeah, I think a lot of games, no matter the developer, the Xbox controller seems to be sort of the gold standard for just plug and play. And if you try anything else, your mileage may vary.
Now, part of that is X input. Microsoft kind of wants you to use that.
Yeah, getting strong-armed a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I know that we have some of our club members that have just gone away from the controllers entirely. We've got some people that were born and raised on keyboard, and so they've been very successful in playing this game with keyboard. I know that Crab Cakes and Asher are out there, and that they're enjoying this game without the need of a controller at all. But then as you get into this game, this is a great example, one of the underwater sections. I think, games can look pretty and they can sound nice, but if you can't make it do what you want it to do, I bounce off of games really fast. And so, Edge, I'll throw this to you first, since you've played this game through to its entire completion. I've seen you already share some opinions in our chat about this game being easy to learn, so to speak, and then ramping up real fast. Talk to me about why you think this game works from a gameplay design perspective.
I think the developer was very conscious in how the challenges, both in the level construction and the enemy design, how those challenge you with respect to the power-ups that you just got. The hook shot is amazing, but every time you think you've mastered it, they throw a very, very strange use case in your way, and you have to figure out, all right, now what the heck do I do with this? And that seems to be the case for a lot of the power-ups that are available. And yeah, it's just all of them feel very, very comfortable to use right out of the gate, but there are a lot of subtle details that you'll only get by, just playing and experience.
Yeah, the hookshot is actually a really good example in this game. Some good movement tech with that, and a lot of different ways to use it, more than you'd expect, really. I will say, though, that this game's controls did seem a bit sloppier than other games. For example, it didn't feel quite as nice as Hollow Knight. It always kind of felt like the controls were fighting me a little bit throughout it.
Smug, what were your impressions as to so far how the game is handled for you? Have you found it easy to pick up, or have you found it more difficult than you expected?
Having not played this genre for a while, it was a lot easier than I was expecting, at least initially. And then, like I said, you get to hookshot. The first couple of little training puzzles are great, and then all of a sudden, oh, how am I going to make this work? And do my fingers still remember how to do that?
I think talking about some of the powers this is a good point to do it. So you start the game with a little piddly blue gun that you see the character using now, and you can get upgrades for that. There are health upgrades out there as well. A couple of the powers that you start to get pretty quickly right after the beginning of the game include the double jump, because you can't do that at the beginning, and so that helps to ungate your progress. Then you have the hook shot. Then you have, what would you call it, like a dash attack after that? What do they call that one?
The dash booster?
That one, thank you. Yep, so you get a dash booster so that you can dash through walls. And then there are probably other power-ups that I have not found yet, because I think I'm a little bit behind all of you. But really what has surprised me about this game is how well and how natural all of those individual discrete power-ups feel when you start to tie them all together. When you're double jumping into a hook shot in order to get yourself over a tall barrier. And the game asks you to do that almost immediately upon receiving the hook shot, which was a little bit of a kick in the teeth for me. I think my stream had to watch me try to do that jump for about 5 minutes. But when you are flying around in here, I hope you guys agree with me, this game feels just great. It's a joy to play.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I love the genre as a whole, and this is a good example of it.
I think one of the interesting things about the power-ups as well is they're very easy to use and pick up, and almost immediately you achieve some level of confidence with them. And I know there's a lot of games that I've played where I get something and I don't immediately get to use it and forget that I have it. Like, oh shoot, I can run, or I have a bike or something. And it never feels like I have to remember to use things. It just comes naturally as soon as I leave sort of the tutorial area where they want you to use it. And I think that's pretty well designed on the part of Emily.
What does everyone think about the challenges that Hempely, the designer, is asking of its players with these tools that you have? I will be the first person to admit that the hookshot took me a long while to get used to, and I'm still not sure whether or not it feels right to me. What was that? And I think that's a good starting point for you, Smug, and for you, Name Tag. How long did it take you to feel like you mastered that hook shot? And if you stream like me and there are people watching you and you keep failing over and over again, it feels bad. But is that me just not being good
right now in the background?
Yeah. Is that just me not being good at games, and so everybody gets to watch me fail? Or do you feel like it was designed properly? Do you feel like the hook shot is fair?
Oh no, I definitely do. But as far as mastering it, it's the 17th of February. I'm still not there. It's like you said, it's been a long time for me since I played any sort of platformer. But the hook shot is definitely one of those things where I've just swung into a wall or fallen down the same drop 20, 30 times in a row before I get it, and then it's the next one that I fail that has to start all over, and just you can do nothing but laugh at this point.
I'll just say this. I've been past the temple. You have not mastered the hook shot. You cannot master the hook shot.
I actually just found the part in your video where we find the hook shot, and so now we get to watch you try to master the hook shot. I figured if we're talking about this tool, we should at least have it on screen so that people can see it.
There you go.
But this is one of those great examples of you get this new tool and now the game suddenly wants you to put all of these pieces together, right? You have a double jump, you have a hook shot, and here we are, testing this equipment out and trying to figure out how it works. Yep. And so, did you all feel like this is fair? Like this is a great way to learn?
Oh yeah, this was fantastic.
Yeah, and the part that he's on right now was the part that I got. It was the next room back out that it just took me a good 20, 25 minutes to figure how to finally get that last swing just right.
So there are some other tools in the game as well. I'm sorry, I cut somebody off. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say, one of the things that I like about this as well is this is a completely enemy-free area. So it's just your challenge is, you don't have to dodge a crazy amount of things to get through this. Just kind of figure out how everything works together and give it a try and take as much time as you need.
Yeah, that's one of those things I did have, like with the power-ups as you picked them up. It's like, here's this area, it's completely devoid of anything that's going to kill you, so go have fun.
And this is that open room that Smug was just talking about where, okay, you've got this new toy and now act like you're an expert using it in order to be able to proceed. But it's a good training exercise, right?
Oh yeah.
So there are some other tools in the game as well that we might see a little bit later. They all seem to gate off different progression. In a Metroidvania like a game like this, I think it's always important to talk about the new areas that you can get into, how those tools unlock new places for you can go, how it keeps the game fresh when you loop back around through areas that you've already backtracked to. The titans of this genre, games like a Super Metroid or games like Castlevania Symphony of the Night, were master classes in making you excited to go back to where you've already been. How do you feel a game like this so far in your experiences stack up in environmental puzzles and tools unlocking progress for you to look at? I've stunned everybody with the question. I love it.
We're all waiting for everyone else to answer.
I mean, you know, it's how do you feel like the exploration in this game stacks up to some of the exploration in other Metroidvanias that you've played? Let me make it simpler.
I think this one opened up the progress in a good way with the various tech that it had. Nothing ever felt completely abstract or out of the way for it. It's like, oh, okay, this kind of seems like a natural way of opening this. Gated areas, I mean, the progression worked in this, I think. Except for there's some backtracking where you really had to think, okay, what room am I missing?
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of that.
Yeah, I think everything was pretty well, for the most part, with how the levels were designed and the backtracking. I think the only exception is there is an area in the water level where it is not very close to any teleporters at all, and that is kind of a thing.
Oh yeah, they shut off teleporters for a good portion of the game over there. And my first death.
Reload time.
And if that was your first one, I feel terrible.
I think that was my first.
What's also nice about this the game, level design wise, is how the save points are labeled in the adjacent rooms. For the most part,
that was really useful.
Yeah, the one thing I will say about that is, you know, as minimalist as this is, I miss having the occasional health drop off of an enemy and having to make your way back to a save point or basically die and restart at that save point every time.
If you're like me and you play on easy, you get a whole lot more hit points to begin with, and so you find yourself having to backtrack a lot less. Team easy.
You also take less damage, I noticed.
Which is super helpful in some of the bosses that we'll talk about. For those of you that are watching this and are interested in playing it, but don't want to be too spoiled by everything you're seeing, we are going to talk for I think Edgeworth and I sort of settled on about the first 60 to 70% of the game. The back 30% of the game we will leave for a future discussion. And so if you're following along with us and playing with us, that would be up to about the temple section or so is where our discussion is going to go for this evening, which is a good pivot into talking about this game's plot. And I will be the first person to admit that I'm not really getting the plot. I know that you're a little robot and that you're exploring an environmental station that kind of went quiet. Does somebody have more to share, or can somebody explain it a little bit better than me?
The game doesn't really reveal the plot until probably even after Temple. Hell, I'm not sure I've seen... In fact, I know I haven't seen all of it with all the secret stuff. But...
yeah, there's up until the Temple point, there's vague discussion about some sort of catastrophe befalling the station involving a computer virus, and it doesn't really get into much more detail.
I have found the various little computers that you find along the way to be very nice at helping you understand where it is that you will probably wish to go next. Even to the point of it will put interesting little points on the map for you to keep an eye on. But then the flavor text, and I have a couple of criticisms here. First and foremost, you run into them infrequently enough that I really can't keep a narrative going as to what befell this station and kind of what went wrong first and what went wrong second, because it feels like it's almost individuals in the station were leaving notes behind for other people to find. and so you don't really get a very clear picture of what's going on. And secondly, and this is a great example of it, I have a hard time reading this text. And maybe it's just me being crotchety, but like when I'm trying to read it and read along, oh look, I followed you, name tag. Oh, everyone go follow name tag too. But I have a hard time reading this font. And maybe that's just me being old and confused. Does anybody else have either of those issues? Either understanding what's going on or just readability?
A little of both, and I think you're farther than me still currently in this game right now, Maya. But yeah, the font is definitely something. There's been a couple of times where I catch myself squinting and getting closer to the monitor with my advanced age and terrible eyes.
Well, I read all the stuff out loud, and you can definitely hear where I stumble over what the word is supposed to be. The M's, the W's, the H's, they all look really similar to each other, that kind of situation.
Yeah, I didn't have very much difficulty with it, but it doesn't look great. I will definitely say that, and it's exactly for those reasons. There's ambiguity between any of the letters that have to be drawn with diagonal lines.
Edge, as the person here on stream with us that has made it through this game the farthest and completed, and I believe you said that you had done some of the bonus content as well. At what point in your playing this game did things start to click for you from a plot perspective and really hook you in, other than just the gameplay?
It was, so I kind of funneled my way through the game, and it was after getting the standard ending that I decided there's definitely more to it than that, and I want to keep going with this. And it was sort of one of those things where I just wanted to tie up a few loose ends at the end of the game, figured, oh, maybe there's a little bit more bonus content, and the rabbit hole just kept getting deeper and deeper.
Yeah, I want to sidetrack for a little bit. When I was talking about how busy the game could be, sometimes a little too busy, those previous rooms were a great example of it. I know that Maya had problems with the mushroom there, trying to see that, no, this is an enemy, it's not part of the background.
Yep, that's an excellent point. I agree.
But yeah, as far as like the plot and the rabbit hole, I'm almost afraid to touch it, to be honest.
So we've talked a little bit about the plot and the atmosphere of the game as well, and that's really where all of these different disparate elements sort of come together for this game. You've got this blocky, pixelated look and feel. You've got this wonderful atmospheric, jazzy, sometimes bluesy, sometimes creepy soundtrack going on in the background. You've got some relatively intense boss music as well. It just sort of comes together as in a whole as a real surprise of a game for somebody who's either very first Steam release or close to their first Steam release. This game is just how sophisticated this is for a first attempt is super impressive.
Definitely, and it's a good example of graphics don't always make a game.
He also definitely has
really
the genre tropes down. Sorry.
No, it's fine. You're good.
Yeah, and it was the thoughtfulness of how well designed Baba Is You was made that made me want to give this a try. Because I do enjoy Metroidvanias a lot, but Baba Is You also has a lot of the charm, the little details, and the attention to mechanics and crazy secrets that this game has. And yeah, it's I ended up enjoying this more than Baba Is You, but it does get a little crazy at the end.
And there's the teleport access that NameTag just found on his stream. Let's talk a little bit about the gating and some of those secrets. I have watched a few of you play this game, and I am a little bit stunned at the amount of bells and whistles and things that people are finding in their games that I am not finding or haven't yet found in mine. Did you guys have that same experience where you're watching someone play and they have completely different equipment than you?
I am right now.
Not different equipment, but watching your stream reminded me of, oh shoot, I need to go back to this room. Oh man, I need to go back over here too. So
yeah, I've been watching a lot of people miss. Let's see, what is it? The triple shot.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, and then I've seen a lot of people.
And in fact, speaking of, there was a room where I need to go back and use that.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people get items that I didn't get until after I had gotten the standard ending, which was a little frustrating to see. But
let's talk a little bit then about the progression of the game up to this point. And so, if you're super worried about spoilers or things along those lines, we'll try to still be a little circumspect about some of the game's secrets. But I think we should talk a little bit about the game's difficulty and some of its bosses, especially on the first half. Because as we've seen on NameTag's stream so far, this is a pretty fun and atmospheric romp at the beginning, but then there are a couple of places where this game really takes the gloves off pretty suddenly. And so let's walk through that a little bit. We saw at the beginning here, there are a couple bosses right off the mat that help you understand what your powers are and what progression is, and things along those lines. But for all of you that are in chat, or all of you that are with me here talking, when did you really feel like, okay, this game is getting real, and you're gonna have to start getting good, so to speak?
For me, it was the volcano lava zone, getting that double shot, right? That boss before it, I got the first phase down, and then there was like no hint at all on that second phase of that boss until suddenly I went running to the other side and was like, oh, there's a glowy thing. Let's try that.
For me, it was the plant boss. The 3 phases. You finally get through the second phase, and it punishes you with the third one. And it's so hard to dodge stuff in there. Of course, I was also forgetting to use the hook shot and such, but
yeah, Overgrowth kicked my teeth into. I feel like that is one of the bigger not damage spikes, difficulty spikes in the game.
yeah, he's one of the gatekeepers, definitely.
Which is appropriate given how many spikes there are in that room.
In fact, here he is now. Doo-doo-doo. And so this is one of the super pleasant bosses that this game throws at you. And I think what we'll do is I'll roll back a little bit so that people can't see maybe what some of the other forms of this boss is, in case they want to play it themselves. But I completely agree with the both of you that I found this boss to be a real wake-up call, that this game was expecting me to put all of these pieces together, and it was time now, and that that they weren't going to, just let me sort of skate by anymore. And I'm playing on easy.
Yeah, I was playing it on normal here, and as I mentioned, the developer of this is very genre savvy. He's using the tools of the genre, the language, the training rooms, the things like that. He's giving good indications. You see the spikes are glowing there. You can learn this stuff quickly if you also are genre savvy on this stuff. The language of the games, he gets it. So that's why I probably didn't have quite as much problems as you. As I love this genre. I play a lot of these, so.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, is that you can have sort of that genre-specific expertise. Like, I'm also pretty familiar with Metroidvanias. I pick up puzzle games pretty quickly, but God help anybody that tries to get me play a fighting game. I'm just totally clueless. and I miss so many of the cues that people that know those kinds of games pick up on. And it's the same with a lot of different genres, like you said. And sort of, if you're genre literate in Metroidvanias, you pick this game up pretty quickly.
And that's why you see a lot of the points where he was mentioning earlier, where I was jumping on the block instead of letting it fall straight away. Or you see me a lot of times, I'm just shooting every wall that I can because I already know that this game does these hidden items. So I look everywhere for them.
This is another one of those bosses that I found to be quite a surprise. This is the serpent boss, where it has multiple different forms, and they start to play that trap, right, where you find the first form and you think, okay, well, I can memorize these patterns and we'll be on our way here in a couple of attempts. And then you find out there's a second form, and then you find out there's a third form, and then you're like, well, how am I supposed to be able to do this? I found this boss pretty challenging, even on easy. What did you all think of it?
Well, this is my first time through it here, and you're going to see what happens.
It looks terrifying.
Yeah, this is one of those bosses where it took me a couple tries to even get to the second phase, and then once I got to the second phase, just barely squeaked by with a little health. Like, that was a little rude surprise. I sure hope they don't do that again.
So I think that was actually my second fight of him the first time I got to the second phase. And again, genre savvy, so...
So, to those of you that have finished this game, and I don't want to go too far into the future here, was there a point where you thought, "Holy cow, this game just took the gloves off, and this is way harder than I thought it was going to be"? Or did you feel like the difficulty level was an easy ramp up from beginning to end? Because I have felt like it's been, kind of nice and pleasant to play, and then all of a sudden it's challenging. Do you guys have that same sort of opinion, or do you feel like it was a pretty steady ramp all the way up?
See, I'm trying really hard to not talk about the post-temple stuff.
Aha!
Yeah. All I'm saying is temple onward. Yeah. The gloves didn't come off. They just put lead weights in them and put them back
And then
on.
spikes, and then...
Yeah. It's just broken glass and all kinds of delightful things.
And I know what's coming for me, which is one of the reasons why I was like, well, I've got an ending, I'm not sure I want to do more. Because I've heard what some of the real challenge stuff in this game is, and it scares me.
Well, I think that's a good segue. We will start wrapping up this first part of the discussion. I'm going to go to Smug first because he and I are the two that have not yet finished this game. Smug, do you feel like you're going to be able to finish this in the month? Are you interested in continuing playing?
Oh yeah, I would love to get this finished by the end of the month. But between my daughter's after-school schedules and the fact that Edge introduced me to a game with trained. I don't know if it's going to happen or not.
Well, how dare you have a life outside of gaming?
Right?
Like, how dare you have responsibilities and
childcare? I never thought it would have happened.
Name tag, you kind of already answered this. You're scared to dive back in. Do you think you will? Think you'll try it anyways?
I might go back in. I mean, I've already marked my third part as final for the stream stuff, as being the mainstream thing. I'm not sure if I would stream the extra post-game stuff, because it would just be a lot of failure. But I've already opened it up and explored a bit. It's like, oh, okay, well, I found this new thing, and this new thing, and... So there's still stuff in there for me. Lots of it. And I'm just not sure I want to hit all those secrets.
And I just put the link to your Let's Plays up in chat so that individuals that are interested watching you play through the first arc of this game, the first 100% or so, can do that. Edge, you're the one that foisted this game upon us to start. Has it been entertaining for you to watch other people play this, and have you felt the itch to dive back in?
I haven't felt the itch to dive back in. It's been a very nice sort of nostalgia trip, and I'm just glad that people are enjoying it. Even if they don't do all of the crazy post-game content, I still think it's a very solid game, and well worth the $7 or $8 that you spent on it.
And for myself, I've really been enjoying this so far. I am not quite up to the temple section yet, and so that's sort of next up for me. So I guesstimate that I'm probably about 50% through the first half of the game. I am really very much enjoying it. The negative parts to the game are so far so few and far between that I'm really enjoying myself and looking forward to finishing it off. We have Lorgon in chat saying he's enjoyed Ed making so many people playing it.
I'm enjoying that too. I'm glad he pointed this one out.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this was a great first selection for our game club, and I'm looking forward to having more people talk with us about their experiences in the wrap up. And so for all of you that are out there listening, what we're planning on doing is we are going to have a second live stream discussion of Environmental Station Alpha with individuals that have completed the game, so that we can talk about the entirety of the first arc, maybe even to start get into that second arc that Edge was talking about, where we start talking about some of the cryptology and the hints that the game is sort of breadcrumbing out for you as you complete that first arc of the game. And so we'll have another one of those discussions in a couple of weeks. Any final thoughts from anybody on this part before we move to the Wheel of Decision to figure out what who gets to pick for March? Okay, not hearing anything, so we will go ahead and we're going to move on to Wheel Decide. Hold on just a second for me to switch streams.
Sorry, I was completely distracted by the temple text.
Yeah, the
So,
robot supervisor being unhappy with the drone robots just being parked in.
We can go back to that for a second. I like the little frogs. Those are little nice touches like that.
Lots of detail in this game.
Exactly.
I was always worried
Exactly.
when I saw, every time I see a new critter, is it dangerous or is it not?
I completely agree.
Is this frog gonna explode?
I know that scorpion's not nice.
I still try shooting it.
Hurt me.
Alrighty. Moving on to the Wheel of Decision then. And so 8 of our club members all decided that they wanted to throw their hat in the ring to pick March's game for our group. And so this is the moment of truth, and we're going to find out who is up next to pick the game club's game for March. Edge, I noted that you also threw your hat in the ring, but I'm sorry, sir, you've already chosen the game. And so you'll just have to wait for your turn again.
You're not going to give me my 1 in 9 chance of maintaining my dictatorship?
Nah, we will. We'll let a new person pick for the month of March. And so on this wheel we have myself, we have Lord Fizzlebeef, Gouda632, Minochi85, Shofu Kamachi, Crabcake, Smugzug, and Name Tag. And I'm going to click and spin only once. And so our winner will be revealed shortly. Smug and Name Tag, if your name is pulled up, or do you already know what game you want to choose, or do you need to think a little bit more?
I've got a list, but I think I know which one's at the top.
I've got 3 or 4 in mind right now. It's just a matter of settling on which one.
Well, I've trimmed my own list down to about 12 or 13 different choices at this point, and so we will see kind of where this goes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click to spin. Here we go. And the winner is Crab Cakes. So Crab Cakes will be the individual that will be picking for us. I realize that I might have been a couple of seconds early there on the decision, but Crab Cakes, you are our winner. And so by the time that we do our next stream, Crab Cakes will be telling us who the what the next game is we're playing for the month of March. And so my guess is that we better get ready for a Paper Mario style game.
I mean, no complaints there.
And no complaints here either. So, final thoughts for all of you before we sign off for the evening? Anybody have anything to say? Anybody have anything they want to plug?
I'm just glad we're doing this. This is a lot of fun. It's exposing us to games that we might not otherwise play. I love that.
Yeah, it's definitely got me looking at some of the things I've gotten over the years in humble bundles or from people giving me smaller indie games. The only thing I'm going to have to say is Maya, you cannot win November just so that we can all participate in it November.
Don't. I promise that I will not try to rig that. I don't know. That would be wonderful for me and awful for the rest of you. So.
I mean, I'd have fun with it again, but I can't imagine the amount of Salt that Edge and a few others would have coming from their stream.
Alrighty then, we will go ahead and sign off here shortly. What I'm going to do is. Well, first thing I'm going to do is say thanks to everybody for tuning in and watching. I hope that this was interesting and valuable for you. I hope that this makes you want to go pick this game up and start playing it yourself. Like Smug said earlier, it's $7.99 on Steam. There might be a Switch port coming out in the near to middle future, and so keep your eyes tuned to the news for that. But anywhere you have a Steam account or computer, whether that be Windows or OS X, OS 10, you can pick this game up as well. And so thanks everybody for watching. I really do appreciate it. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks. I'm going to go ahead and mute this for a little bit. And then I'm going to find us somebody to host or raid. We'll go ahead and continue on with our evening. So thanks everybody for listening, and good night everybody.
Take care and enjoy the games you play.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Let's find somebody to host. Let's see, who do we have out there? Hey, Melee Wizard. Let's go visit Melee Wizard, everybody. Melee Wizard is playing Xenosaga 3. Wow. I don't know if anybody's ever rated a Xenosaga 3 stream before, but we're about to be the first. So, everybody in. And thanks again, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you again, okay?